This festival celebrates the transformative power of literature and art, and this session invites us to explore some of the most pressing and complex issues shaping our world. From nuclear threats and radical ideologies to underground finance and the global drug trade, the Nukes, the Jihad, the Hawalas, and Crystal Meth by Iqbal Chand Malhotra uncovers how these intertwined forces impact the very fabric of our society. I would like to invite sociologist Dr. Srishtee Sethi, our lead discussant for the session. Uh, Dr. Sethi has been an Erasmus Plus Fellow whose academic credentials include Harvard University, TISS Mumbai, and the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, Missouri. Welcome, ma'am. Kindly take this session forward. Thank you so much. Is it okay if I sit down? Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this pleasant evening. I would like to start by introducing our very esteemed guests on the stage. Our chair for the evening, Lieutenant General PGS Pannu, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, former Deputy Chief of Integrated Defense and a second-generation officer in the Indian Army, also a board member, and curates the military history and strategy vertical for the Valley of Birds. Welcome, sir. I'd like to now introduce our very special author who's with us today, Mr. Iqbal Chand Malhotra. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
He started his career in television in India as Rupert Murdoch's strategic advisor on the establishment of the Star TV network in India. The television bug having bitten him fully, he joined AIM Television Private Limited and has produced all its shows from 2000 onwards. Apart from this, he has directed and produced incisive and cutting-edge feature documentaries on a variety of national and international political subjects. The list of the documentaries is extremely long and much liked by a lot of our audience members, and it's on the website for you to check out. Some of them include The Tibetan Circus, along others who have won critical acclaim across. With that, I would also like our chair and the author to officially launch the book, which has been consistently placed on #1 on Amazon and various other portals. Therefore, the popularity of not just the subject, but the exact theme has been highlighted through its intense and excessive sales online. Let me congratulate you on that, sir. If we could officially launch the book. Thank you, Dr. Chopra, for joining us. I would request the chair of the session to kindly say a few words to start the session.
Jai Hind, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very complex subject that we are discussing today. And my mind doesn't rest with the thought that the complexities through which India is dealing with some powers who we say adversaries or a threat, what it intrigues me is how much do we know what is happening very close to us? What is happening maybe in the neighborhood? How live the threat is? What kind of threat is there? So therefore, the audience sitting here, if I ask you a question, if I give you an option to give you a lot of money, and there will be a free access of money, how many would opt for it? Yes, yes. And it's safe money. A lot of money? Only two? Others don't? How many? A lot of money, easy money. Okay, very few. Okay, no, then I'll ask you next question. I'll change the question. How many of you need power? Power. Power. You don't, power, okay? Power to just about take a decision and execute anything. Power. How many of you just need entertainment? Where your mind moves easy and happy and all the time. You're, being taken care. You're blessed. You are now very close to the Almighty. Maybe Allah. You're already there. So, yeah, because the subject is around that. So
No,
when
but then don't forget the 22 huris
no, I think there are more. Okay.
per person.
Per person.
72, I don't know. My maths is not that good.
And if I give you money, power, the life's pleasures, and then I say, would you want to have a religion which actually apparently looks boring, but you can have all this if you go through this religion, and therefore follow the mullah, and he will take you to the rest. So I'm not very sure what I want. All of it, yes. Some of it, maybe. None of them, maybe. You want to avoid it, maybe. You want to go for it today, maybe. Do you want to deliberate? Maybe. The point is that we do not have a very certain answer. But our neighborhood, like Pakistan, has figured it out, and we have no idea how they figure it out so easily. And another person in India who's figured it out is my friend Iqbal Chand Malhotra. He has written this book like a movie. He has figured it out in a manner that he is sitting in a room where every character is having a deal right in front of him. Whether it talks about the bomb, manufacturing of nuclear bomb. Where are we going to arrange money from? Somebody says, I will arrange it. How are you going to arrange the money when the Pakistan financial state is what we have always been hearing of? Don't worry, we will arrange you a lot of money. Don't worry, and you will have enough of it. It comes from the drugs. Or you want to consume drugs, or you want to sell drugs, maybe both. The drugs came out from the fields, put in the ships, sent somewhere, and what comes in return is arms, ammunition. And arms and ammunition empowers people. You know the power of a gun in front of people who are absolutely powerless is huge power. That you can have a decision in your head, shoot or not shoot. And imagine if you have that discretion to shoot or not, you are almighty. You actually feel almighty. The power of the gun, the power, they have the authority, and if you become the state sponsored, it's the ultimate power. You don't need a bomb. But if anybody threatens you from outside, then you have a bomb in the basement. Then you again wield power. So power, money, drugs, and all rolled into religion and sold to every person through the basic training into their culture is that yes, all this is there. So everybody is enjoying something, but being in pain without knowing that actually facing the pain. So therefore, today, what we are going to be talking about is 2 books of his, but today the release is of only 1 book, but it has a background. We're talking about the Nukes. In the earlier book, he talks about a bomb. Whether it was the same bomb as a nuke is something that he will tell us. In the first book, he talks about mullah. I don't know whether it is mullah or mullah, I think mullah. And here he talks about jihad. And we say, mullah, jihad, is there a relationship? He will tell. Then he talks about the bank. Now, bank is a bank where we all go, but he also talks about hawala. So it means, will you go to a bank to get the money, or you say, no, don't worry, I'll arrange it for you, but you don't have to go to a bank, so it's hawala. And then he talks about the poppies. Now, a poppy is grown by nature, but how does poppy become opium? And the Pakistani generals are the ones who have the solution and who have the administrative control over it, how they manage it, and then how does it actually go down to having another form of it, crystal meth. He will tell us, because I don't know the difference between. He's figured it out, and he will take you through the journey, which it appears, if somebody picks up this book, you can straight away make a movie. You don't have to rewrite it. So it's that good. Thank you very much, Srishtee. I think let's enjoy the discussion.
Thank you so much, sir. I think you really set the tone, and all of us are really excited. I obviously could not put down the book the moment I received it. Also, it helped that I'd written a little thesis on A.Q. Khan. But, sir, what a wonderfully researched book. I must appreciate that, and so much to learn. So many more thematics, so many more perspectives that emerge out. Having said that, I think General Pannu has also hinted at, the way the narration takes place in the book, it's nothing less than a theater, it's nothing less than a movie sort of rolling in front of our eyes, because every page, almost every second page, has a new character that is introduced, a new network, a new series of events. So, of course, the story is broad-based, it's very layered, and the characters are multiple. So with that, I'd like, sir, to highlight, certain characters, the layers, and the broad-based story for our young audience, some of the college students who would really understand how it all starts, because every page or two, there's a new character that is introduced. You know, for example, the ISI chief, Hadi Bashir, the Afghanistan cartel, then the Mexican. So I'd like for you to initiate this conversation by highlighting some of the characters and the layers of the story.
Thank you, Srishtee. Let me tell you one thing that I'm essentially a filmmaker, and I started off by being a filmmaker, and then I began to write film scripts. And from film scripts, I graduated into writing books. So when I'm writing a book, I'm actually visualizing it, and then I'm writing it. So therefore, the backstories, the subplots, the machinations of different characters all come into play because it's written with that perspective. And also, these are not really academic books, but they transcend the boundaries between academics and what I call entertainment. And I feel that any story is compelling if it's told well and it's got the necessary trimmings. And once it's got the trimmings, then you've hooked the reader. And once you've hooked the reader with the first page, then you've hooked him for the rest of the book. And so I think most of the books that are on subjects like this are extremely dry and academic, and they're tomes, and they resort to who quoting X, Y, and Z. So the story actually begins with I was doing a film in 2003 on the A.Q. Khan network. And that film was called The Nuclear Grade Game. And it premiered in March 2004 on NHK in Japan. And that actually showed how Dr. A.Q. Khan voluntarily took the blame for the whole imbroglio that emerged when this whole nuclear Walmart was exposed by the world press. And funnily enough, he was made to broadcast a televised statement before the Pakistani people saying that, he has taken the blame because it was not the government that actually transgressed the boundaries and this proliferation took place. It was all because of his personal interest. So, interestingly, the speech was in English, and about I think 90% of the Pakistanis don't speak English or they don't understand English. It's only a small elite. So who was the speech directed towards? It was directed towards the Western world, towards the Western audience. And funnily enough, I came across this footage which I purchased, which showed Dr. A.Q. Khan with a similar kind of mic ID shoved in front of his face with the logo of Pakistan television emblazoned on it. And he's asked that, Dr. Khan, you are going to give a speech to the nation and you are going to take the blame. Are you prepared for that? So he said, well, you see, I've already spoken to President Musharraf, and he's told me that everything will be fine. It will be as always as before. So go ahead and apologize to the nation. So he moves on. And then there is a shot of him and Musharraf sitting in the studios of Pakistan television in Islamabad. where after he's given this address, they are having swapping jokes and cracking jokes, and they're congratulating each other. But then the story unfolds differently. So A.Q. Khan became an important character. But the other character who actually started this game was a man called Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, whom a lot of people probably have forgotten or don't even know about because he was hanged in 1978, I think. And, if you go back into history, I think it was the 16th of December 1971 when the Pakistan army surrendered in Dhaka. And about 3.5 weeks later, early January, Mr. Bhutto calls a conference of all the important scientists, theoretical physicists, and other engineers in Pakistan in a town called Multan. And he asked them this question that which one of you can deliver me the bomb? And there was the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission, which was set up by President Ayub, who had taken over the reins of power in, I think, 1958 in a military coup d'etat. And he had the foresight to set up all these institutions because he copied Pandit Nehru in setting up the same kind of institutions that were being set up in India. Now, none of those guys could give Mr. Bhutto a correct or a precise answer. Now, in that gathering, there was also a man called Mr. Ghulam Ishaq Khan, who later on in the 1980s became the president of Pakistan. I think it was also his presidency extended into the early 1990s, and I think he was the man who dismissed Benazir Bhutto's government. Now, Ghulam Ishaq Khan was a very famous person, a very interesting person, because he was an ICS officer, Indian Civil Service, commissioned in 1940, and he was posted in Gilgit. Now, funnily enough, the British had a very top secret classified operation in Gilgit, which was based on spying, directed towards spying on the Soviet nuclear program across the border in Xinjiang and in Kazakhstan, because the Americans were not willing to part with the secrets of the bomb to anybody. And they were being spied upon by the Russians. And the British were spying upon the Russians. So it was a complex story. But Ghulam Ishaq Khan was the bureaucrat who was in charge of, providing the logistics to this whole operation. So he, in many ways, was in the same light as Mr. Naresh Chandra, who was a similar bureaucrat in India who held the keys to our nuclear secrets, and Ghulam Ishaq Khan held the keys to Pakistan's nuclear secrets. So to fast forward to 1971, Ghulam Ishaq Khan accompanied Zulfikar Ali Bhutto on a whirlwind tour of the Arab world to raise money to set up a bank, which was actually going to be a commercial bank, but the purpose, it was going to be a commercial bank, but it was set up ostensibly to be a commercial bank, but it was actually going to be clandestinely fund the Pakistan nuclear program. But their trip wasn't very successful, and the only person who agreed to bail them out was the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi, who had then, the UAE had newly been formed, and the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi was the president of the UAE, and he told them that, look, you will have to capitalize this bank at a very low price because I can only offer you $500,000 as equity. But I will give you hundreds of millions of dollars as deposits, provided you give me a rate of interest which is higher than the London interbank borrowing rate. So what happened was that these guys agreed, and they actually used the deposits that he placed with them as the equity of the bank to attract other people. And so it became a Ponzi scheme where more and more equity was used to pay off the interest and the earlier loans. So that was the second aspect of this. The bank was to fund the nuclear program. And so you have the first character of Dr. A.Q. Khan, the second character of Mr. Abidi, who actually set up this bank. And interestingly, Mr. Abidi was a member of Pakistan's deep state because he was running another commercial bank in Pakistan. And as part of his job, he was also funding an organization called the Master Cell, which was the mother lode of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir from 1966 onwards. So he was providing them with funds through Hawalas. So he was co-opted to run this bank. And then we find that everything went well during the 1970s because it was a period of a boom in oil prices. But then the oil prices hardened and demand somewhat tapered off because the conservationists came into the game, and they had to look for alternative means of finance. But what happened was that during the course of that, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and an opportunity was provided to the Pakistanis to get a lot of money from Saudi Arabia and the US to fund a jihad whose purpose was to not only drive the Soviets out of Afghanistan, but to lead to the collapse of the Soviet state. So the bank then became the banker to the jihad, and it began laundering money which was being provided by the US government and by the Saudis to fund the anti-Soviet jihad in Afghanistan. And during the course of money laundering, there was a general there called Lieutenant General Fazle Haq, who was the person who arrested Bhutto when he was Prime Minister of Pakistan under the orders of General Zia when the coup took place in 1977. And Fazle Haq had studied the debacle in Vietnam that the US Army faced and the post-traumatic stress disorder faced by the soldiers and their resort to heroin so that they could combat their post-traumatic stress and deal with it. And so there was an expansion in addiction amongst the US Army. So Fazle Haq thought that this was an interesting product, and why not we make it, because opium has been grown in Afghanistan for many, many decades and maybe even centuries. So he went into creating refineries to transform opium into heroin, and they were paid for by the Bank of Credit and Commerce, BCCI. And in the course of that, they had to also launder the money that was being generated from these sales. And then they discovered that cocaine was the main product of choice into the US. So why not get into the cocaine money laundering business as well? So they teamed up with the Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel and the Cali cartel, and they began to launder their money. And General Noriega of Panama was also involved in this because he provided protective cover to the shipments of cocaine from Colombia into the continental United States. Now, interestingly, what happened, it's a long story, so I'm trying to cut it short. But if you want me to deal with the characters, then I have to introduce the characters. But if you want to move to the next question, we can do that as well.
Yes, I mean,
Would you like to take mine?
yes, with the permission of the chair, of course. And I also feel like this is a significant introduction to the heavily layered personalities that each character has and the influences, that they've had, not just within their own country and nation state, but across the globe. So, for example, a character who's functioning geographically out of South Asia, say Pakistan, but the influences and the strategic insights that they've had reach out quite in the distant domain of, say, Latin America or the, United States of America. But I would like for the chair to sort of highlight the roles, here as to where India was placed. All of this is happening Pakistan and beyond. And parallelly within the Indian system, of course, we had Washington collaborations developing with the, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh at the time. So if Sir would like to, shine some light on that.
Interestingly, the America divided India and Pakistan into different quarters. Pakistan was part of the Central Command, and India was part of the Pacific Command, PACOM. The Americans dealt with Indian through a different lot of people. And they dealt with Pakistan and the region towards Afghanistan and beyond, different lot of people. So the generals of the American army who dealt with Pakistan did not talk to us, and those who dealt with us did not talk to Pakistan. So therefore, the deep state of America or their political establishment invested different ways of dealing with both adversaries. Because they were not interested in the fight between India and Pakistan, they were interested in controlling these two regions very differently. Pakistan was made member of CETO, CENTO, and given a lot of funds for their development, but what development was, which was supposed to go for human development, went into development of bombs and tanks and planes and terrorism. And of course, you know, they manage their own money the way it is being spoken about. The Indian could not understand Pakistan beyond the boundary dispute. The Kashmir and the wars that we fought right from the day we became independent, and how we got to deal initially with the border issue and then later with the proxy war that Pakistan unleashed on us. And they made India into a reactive country. We were reacting to whatever Pakistan did. We were reacting to whatever China did. We were also reacting to whatever America wanted us to do. Without making us realize that whatever is happening in Afghanistan, Pakistan, is part of the great game in which Indians were made to believe we are not part of the great game. But we were certainly part of the great, we were central to the great game, but we were kept away from even understanding the great game. Now the great game was played between the two, nuclear and then two powerful Russia or Soviet at that time in America. And the playground was the Middle East to FPAC region. And that is how the Russians came there, because Americans were always interested in coming, getting into the areas and to stop the Russians from coming in. I think Pakistan and their generals were byproducts of the Western universities and Western academies. And therefore, their understanding of the global affairs was much better than the Indian generals. The Indian politician was kept to deal with very private Indian stuff inwards. We were not communicating to the world, we were communicating to our people, and therefore China called us a struggling nation, because we always were fighting amongst each other and sorting out things. And even today you find that we are so much involved with our own internal conflicts that we do not understand the outer contours. But what Iqbal has done is to bring out all that was at that time not looked at, which was under a cover. I think he's blown the lid off. He has also brought to people the minor to major, tactical to operational to strategic level in which the Pakistan army and Pakistan politics plays. Pakistan politics is actually subservient to Pakistan military. And Pakistan military is more international than any other military in the world is concerned. They were dealing with China, they're dealing with America, they were dealing with whole lot of state, non-state actors together. So therefore, I think that is something which is worth noticing. And I think Iqbal, once he starts explaining those things, are what India must look at.
I think if I'll pick up the baton from here.
Yes, please.
I'll just say that the Pakistan army is definitely global in its outlook. It is probably one of the only armies that has actually transcended a pure military activity, and they've encroached into the domain of economics, international trade, and they have been instrumental in providing the structural oversight that looks at the global opium heroin industry, the global the charas industry, the global cocaine industry, and the global crystal meth industry. This structural oversight is very important because they're very good managers of these businesses, and they know exactly how these businesses should react to market trends. So structural oversight is a very important aspect, that role that has been played by the Pakistan army. And then they have always used fear, force, and favoritism to ensure their survival. So it's an organic process. And within the Pakistan army, you have the Inter-Services Intelligence Directorate, which has got a unit called Directorate S, which has been specially staffed by SSG officers who have proved their mettle in being able to handle stress and think on their feet, which is very important. So the army has played a very big role, and they have also been pioneers in refining what I call deviant globalization. Now, the world has been globalizing for the last 30 years, but parallel to legitimate globalization, you've got deviant globalization, which is the integration of narcotics networks, integration of money laundering networks, integration of international crime syndicates and their supply chains, backwards and forwards. So structural oversight into criminal businesses, deviant globalization, and the ability to let the world know that they are the only independent narcotic state or narco state with its own nuclear deterrent and with its multi-product portfolio, and nobody can mess with them.
Exactly. I think it's so important to just parallelly understand the deviant globalization, which actually carries much more, obviously, money, the importance that the finances are there, but as well as the crime, criminality, the strategic foresight that travels alongside the deviant globalization is pretty significant. In fact, I would like to highlight, the cartel that is mentioned towards the end of the book, and if I may refer to it. Joaquin El Chapo, who was one of those significant characters that's
Guzman.
built upon.
Yeah.
And also, where the cocaine, the heroin, and certain
meth.
other, yes, crystal
meth.
meth, who's, I mean, these are products that one thought that were situated and transferred in and around the Atlantic. But the significant presence that was found in the South Asian, the Middle Eastern region, and the significance also stretches across to the Far East. So if you could shed some light on that, and also how these people have become more powerful than some of the presidents of countries.
I'll give you a very interesting statistic. In the year 2019, there is a market in Afghanistan. It's the wholesale market for crystal meth. It's called the Bakwa market, and it's in a province called Farah, which is next to the province of Helmand, which was the Waterloo of the British Army in the period of, I think, 2008 to 2021, where they lost a number of soldiers and their counterinsurgency operations all failed. And Helmand was the focal point for the wholesale market for opium, and Farah was the focal point for the wholesale market of crystal meth. And in 2019, you could buy 1 metric ton of crystal meth in the bazaar in Bakwa for US dollars 320,000, 3,20,000 US dollars per metric ton. And that metric ton, once it was shipped to to North America, it would retail in North America for $40 million a metric ton. So it's a 100-time multiple, right? So now this 100-time multiple was being generated. And how was it being generated? Because the Americans, in all their, I would say, stupidity or foolishness or their, arrogance, they had housed in the same prison in Manhattan, the Federal State Correctional Facility, the Mexican drug lord from the Sinaloa cartel, El Chapo Guzman, and Haji Bashir Nurzai and Haji Juma Khan, who were the top 2 drug lords from Afghanistan, who were arrested. And in fact, Haji Bashir Nurzai was the man who provided the aggregation of opium in 1994 when the Taliban was first formed. And he then came back into the scene in 2004, and Haji Juma Khan was his deputy. And the person who actually secured the release of Haji Juma Khan from the prison was a man called Zalmay Khalilzad, who was the US ambassador, US president's special envoy to Afghanistan. So it was a game of treachery where the Americans were stabbed in the back by their own puppets. So the puppets this time hit out at the puppeteer, and the puppeteer became the victim.
So would you like to add?
No, I think students should ask a question.
Sure. I think we also have 7 to 10 minutes left for this session. So if at this point anybody in the audience would like to step forth and ask a question, and you could address it.
I I think that we could ask a question to the student.
I agree. If not, perhaps there's... Oh, there.
Please.
Sir, please.
Dr. Datta,
Yes.
please.
Do we have...
Nice to see you, Iqbal here. This whole drug operation in Afghanistan was being run by CIA, and these guys got caught in New York, and the Directorate of Drug Enforcement Agency, they caught them. And when they were trying to take them from Caucas, the CIA intervened, and the CIA said, lay your hands off, they are our guys. So it was a whole operation in Afghanistan which was done by CIA with ISI. And they knew it. The drugs are going to end up on the streets of New York and Los Angeles. So it was dog eat dog kind of thing, and the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, and they were doing it for ages. The only objective was to ruin their agriculture. So once you grow poppy there, nothing else grows there. So it was totally a CIA operation.
No, Dr. Datta, I beg to differ with you. It was not a CIA operation, but the CIA had, in the first phase of it, had turned a blind eye to the drug operation because their aim was to destroy the Soviet Empire. And in the second phase of the game, the aim of the CIA, as enshrined by President Bush, was to destroy Al-Qaeda and kill Osama bin Laden. They didn't have the ability to deal with the Pakistan drug issue or the Pakistan nuclear issue. They, however, I think some corrupt CIA officers definitely made a lot of money. Some American generals made money. But the American government was not able to effectively deal with the opium problem like they dealt with it with the cocaine problem in Colombia. It was not because of a lack of intent. It was because they were just at sea and they didn't have a public consensus on whether they should go to war with the Taliban and whether they should eradicate the Taliban's drug business or the ISI's drug business. That is my view. That is what is written in my books. But I mean, you have a different view on it. But I differ with that.
Yeah, okay. But the CIA knew what was happening there.
No, undoubtedly, the CIA knows that NSA is listening into every telephone conversation or every conversation anywhere going on, and they're probably even monitoring this conversation right now.
Yes.
I think his two books are The Tale of Deception, the first, and then it becomes Tale of Treasury later. So there was a certain shift in that.
Another question. Sir, please.
My name is Niranjan Bakshi. You've given an extremely good background to your book. My question is that if it was all too profitable, like the point you make it out to be, why was the USA in such a rush to get out of Afghanistan? So much money coming into it.
Body bags. The American public was unwilling to accept any more body bags. And secondly, the post-traumatic stress disorder, which affected close to 200,000 US veterans and servicemen, was causing a drug epidemic in America. And in fact, this lady Kamala Harris, when she was standing on Biden's ticket in 2020 against Trump, they were very clear that they wanted to end the war at any cost because it was politically unacceptable to continue to be in Afghanistan 19 years after you entered that theater and also after bin Laden had been killed and Al-Qaeda had been degraded. Now the question was that, was America ready to go to war with Pakistan? They didn't have a stomach for that. They tried, they simulated exercises, they got the Joint Special Operations Command to see if they could take out the Pakistani nuclear arsenal, but the Pakistanis very cleverly disconnected or dismantled their nuclear warheads and placed them in mobile vans, which were moving up and down the country so that the JSOC teams could not address all the 150 or 175 warheads and the dummy warheads in about 300 vehicles at any point of time. So the Americans gave up and therefore they had to get out. Otherwise they would have burnt another few $1 billion and another few hundred body bags, which wouldn't have got them anything.
Thank you. There's one more question.
Madam, it's supposed to be non-fiction, but you can treat it any way you like. I've got all the references at the back of it, so it's up to the reader to decide. But there's no reason why non-fiction can't be entertaining.
Exactly.
Now, is the US deep state, is it something which is even the CIA doesn't know about?
Madam, if I was a fly on the wall, I could tell you that, answer that, but I am not. So I'm afraid it's beyond my capabilities.
What does it do?
What does what do?
The US deep state, like what recently happened in Bangladesh?
No, I'm not. I think General Pannu can answer that question. I'm not equipped to answer that.
Whenever the nations behave, actually they behave on 4 layers. The first is a political layer. The second is a layer of the industry and the business. Third is a layer of the media and all that controls the information. And one very obscure layer is the intelligence departments of all. And all of them have actually done so many intelligence operations together, literally becoming bed partners, that good, bad, or ugly, sometimes you find that there is a deeper and stronger wedding between the intelligence agencies than they have with the establishment on top. So therefore, the deep state does not move when the top layers move. The deep state stays. So therefore, good, bad, or ugly, they will steer the nation into a direction by default how the deep state wants it to move. So therefore, why it is called deep is that they cannot be understood, because a lot of things are at stake personally, organizationally. They are rooted, like you talk about the dark web. Dark web is even beneath the deep web. And therefore, a lot of stuff happens in the dark web which ordinary people on the internet won't understand. Cryptocurrency. Is he doing it deliberately? Ki time khatam ho gaya?
Hey, Janaria.
State is with us, I believe.
But who controls the deep state? I mean, it's human beings that were there. It's not as if it's automatic or artificial intelligence.
The deep state, everybody tries to control. How much they can control is something which they only realize when they can't control it. I think a lot is constituted, but a lot of stuff then is in default.
If I may, sir. I mean, also the idea, as sir is mentioning, is there's the known and the unknown, and the unknown layers are much deeper, if I can highlight that. But I think the books that were presented and discussed today, and the research and the kind of method that has been put through to inquire the topic and a theme which is so vast and so enormous, I think we must acknowledge that it's seeming like fiction, it's seeming like work of fiction because it flows so seamlessly and the characters are understood, at least that attempt is made, so seamlessly connected across the networks of, the narco network, the organized crime networks, as well as the jihadi network. The nuclear networks, that is kind of at the core of all of this. And with that, I also want Sir to have a final sort of round to tell us an aspect of the book which connects straight away to the Indian continent and Dawood Ibrahim's presence. And with that, perhaps we can initiate the ending of the session.
I'll only allude to a little side story of a man called Altaf Khanani. And Altaf Khanani is a Gujarati Mehman from Karachi. And he set up shop in 1984 to actually finance organized crime. And by 2001, he was also co-opted as the chief financial officer of D Company, better known as Dawood Ibrahim's organization. And apart from that, he was also co-opted as the chief financial officer of Jalaluddin Haqqani for the Haqqanis as well, who are very big in the drug trade. And this gentleman was arrested by the US government and he was sentenced to 5 years prison and he was released in 2020. And in 2021, a group of ex-servicemen, US ex-servicemen and their families who the servicemen were killed in action in Afghanistan, they filed a case against certain European banks and these people to basically say that they wanted damages because they had lost their family members as a result of these crime syndicates funding the Taliban, which was involved in an insurgency against the US occupation of Afghanistan and the nominee Afghan government. So that case is still going on. So this is just an interesting aspect of it.
Yes.
No, just one sentence. Deep state has more information than the king. No. When I say then, you may see it as a metaphor that the power on top, the deep state has more control because they have more information. And therefore, the king of the day has to rely on the deep state because if it stops functioning, then the roots become shaky.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It has been such an honor to be part of this panel. And I think we've only just touched the very tiny layer on top. But please go ahead and pick up these books. These copies are available everywhere online. And then you'd understand that this session and this duration is just too short to even get into the initial 5 or 6 chapters of it. Looking forward to many more sessions with you, sir. And hope General Pannu also can make it back to Dehradun every so often. A wonderful pleasure this evening. Thank you, audience. Over to you.
Thank you to our panelists for such an engaging session. I would like to request our WOW team to present the WOW token of love from us to our panelists. Folks, do remember to grab a copy of the book for yourself or your loved ones. You can also get your copy signed from the authors at the designated bookstalls.